Gary Abbott here with USA Wrestling, and we're meeting with Nate Jackson, who chairs the Black Wrestling Association and is willing to visit with us today on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Nate, to celebrate the day, I'd just like to get your thoughts about Martin Luther King Day, what it means to you, and why it's so significant for our country.
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to reach out to me. I'm happy that I had some availability where we could kind of connect, and I think it's a really important day. It should be a great day. I'm happy that we can celebrate today. Dr. King, what he means to me, he was a very principled man. He was obviously a man of faith. He was obviously a person who sought out knowledge, and he was a powerful speaker and a uniter of men and women. So I think it's really important to have those people to look back to, but also to remember what they stood for. One thing that happens, it tends to happen with history, we forget that those giant people in our history were human. He had a lot of struggles with different things. He had to tackle a lot of really tough and scary oppositions. But his courage for me is something that really stands out, and it makes being courageous today a lot easier for myself and for a lot of people who try to take on that mantle and continue to do the work that Dr. King stood about, and unifying people. So yeah, man, I'm really happy to be here to share today. I think one big quote that stands out to me from Dr. King is, our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about things that matter. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge quote, and it says a lot without getting too wordy. I think that's all what people are about. We should be about service to our brother, right? To our sister, and lifting each other up. And if we see something going wrong and we aren't that, then we're actually taking the side of the opposition. So I think that's something that I stand for. Even as a kid, growing up, my parents really raised me to be principled and stand on really, really core beliefs. Not only through faith, but also just in service to, our fellow man. So yeah, Dr. King was the guy for that. And he has so many examples throughout his own life. When we talk about different struggles that he had, he chose to peacefully protest at a time where, it was very overt challenges to doing anything. You talk about water hoses, you talk about the threats of dogs, you talk about, being attacked with billy clubs and whatnot. You talk about things that happen with bombings of churches with children in them. Even some of his own passages and some of his own speeches, he kind of very overtly put out how tough it was to remain peaceful. How tough it was to lead peaceful movements. And I think oftentimes we kind of put him in this box of docile. He wasn't really that, right? I mean, he was just as much of a powerhouse and a man as any other man. But to choose the route that he chose, it really showed how much strength he had and how much courage and how much faith he had, because he was really willing to risk it all. I mean, he went to jail so many times, and it only takes one wrong encounter for him to lose his life, and he chose to be on the forefront of that. So just for myself, his life really is a testament to leadership. Sometimes leaders think that, or people think that to be a leader, you got to find pawns and be in the background. And mm-hmm. That's not really what leadership is about. I think it's about laying it on the line, being on the front line, and really walking the walk. And Martin Luther King did that, as well as anybody the world has even ever seen. So, yeah.
So when in your life did you find out about Dr. King, and how did you learn more about him and his legacy and what he meant for all of us? You can't assume people have access to that kind of information, right? How did it become a part of your life?
So I think it always starts with education. I think that education actually holds more power than people think. We talk about creating policy for this and that. I think there's a big opportunity with education on getting a lot of things in people's head right away, and getting them to understand what's what, and how to do that without changing them, but really challenging them and growing their perspective. So when I was a kid, we had Martin Luther King Day at school. I didn't know who the guy was. I thought he kind of looked like me, looked similar to me. And, through, having conversations with my parents, I really got to know who he was. I also learned a lot about other figures around the same time, Malcolm X, et cetera, and just some of the different ideologies. And then also a lot of the overlap and how they work together on certain things. So I think Dr. King, for my generation at least, has always been a part of my life. And it's really important that when we talk about Dr. King, we don't just talk about the highlights, the I Have a Dream speech, the March on Washington, and different things like that. But we also talk about him as a human being, because Dr. King exists in all of us. And it's a lot of power in acknowledging that, because it means that we're all responsible for our brother, and we're all responsible to take up that torch and continue that walk. And I think it kind of highlights that Dr. King's life's work wasn't realized when he died. It wasn't realized. So there is some ways to go. Pushed everyone and brought everybody up to another level. So yeah, it's a lot to acknowledge and a lot to respect with his life. He still has children that are doing his work going forward. So we kind of all have a responsibility to continue to listen, continue to grow, and continue to be responsible with how we not only how we represent ourselves, but how we advocate for others.
So, obviously, this has been an interesting, challenging, changing year, right, in our country. And on Martin Luther King Day, I just want your thoughts about how his life, his teachings, the example he set, how important that is for people to be aware of, based upon all the issues our country's dealt with and the conversations we've had in areas like social justice and race relations and police brutality and the things that really became part of our lives at a higher level this year.
Yeah, for sure. So the pandemic obviously caused a lot of issues and it really upheaved people's livelihoods. Even, it hit home, I think, for a lot of people. It hit people's families really close, on a level that, at least this generation has never seen. So it's something that affected the entire world. And I think at that point, we could have done a better job of being a little bit more unified, because we were all dealing with the same thing. As we look back on it, I think things are going to continue to get better. I think that as a human race, we will be a little bit more ready and a little bit more alert and respectful of the viruses and how things can evolve and the different science that goes into it. But at the same time, there was a lot of downtime for us as human race to really think about some of the things that plague our world, right?
Yeah.
We had a lot of time to be introspective, and then there were some bad moments that we were all watching, right? The tough part is to look into that, to watch it, to understand, and then choose not to turn a blind eye the next time. So there's a lot of lessons that this year has taught. And a lot of those things are not going to be resolved overnight. I think for the most part, the world is doing a lot of healing, and not just in the US, but all over the world, movements have been happening. It's a time where the people's wishes, I think, are on the table, where people are having the conversations and the discussions about what is needed to be done. I think a lot of the people at these tables have a really good understanding on how to change things. Dr. King, he was very much so an American and a patriot, but he also understood that for us to get to the place of the ideals that exist within our founding documents, we do have to make some changes and make some adjustments. So I think this is an opportunity for the world to not only engage in conversations, but to start to make lasting and meaningful impact in people's lives, to eliminate some disparity gaps, and to just create opportunity for a more unified world. I think that, I didn't really, I've traveled all over the world. I'm pretty blessed to be able to travel with USA Wrestling and compete internationally. But the world is a really big place. And it's unfortunate that something like this had to happen for us to see how close we are tied together. So when something happens in China, it can affect me in New Jersey, right? It can affect my family in Chicago. So, being a little bit more responsible and being a little bit more keen to that, obviously in a biohazardous perspective, but also, when injustice happens anywhere, and this is another Dr. King quote, injustice anywhere, or not exactly, I don't want to misquote him, but the gist of the quote is, if injustice is happening anywhere, then injustice can happen everywhere, right? So I think being close as a world, obviously we're doing a Zoom right now. I don't think I've ever done so many Zooms and so many FaceTimes, and the world is so much more connected now. I'm in your living room right now, which is pretty cool. You're in my office right now, which is pretty cool. And that's a blessing. And so we need to take advantage of that in being as close as we are, to not close that door and not, cover that lens where we're disconnected, but instead to open that door and give people a peek inside so we can start to heal and get a little bit closer.
So I'm going to ask a few questions about the Black Wrestling Association. Obviously, at some point during this year, and I believe it was a group of men's freestyle wrestlers got together, and I'm not sure you all were thinking about putting together an organization and building a structure, but you had a reason to be together, and something came out of it that's really good for wrestling. What brought the original group of wrestlers together to decide to communicate with each other and maybe reach out to others?
Yeah, the way that happened is similar to how this happened, right? You messaged me, you called me, we had a little chat, and then we got on a call. I think, it started off with myself and Kyvan Gadsden, and then it spread to the Jordan Burroughs of the world, and the Kenny Mondays, and the Kerry McCoys, and the Kevin Jacksons, and on and on and on. And after a while, we had like a group of like 60 men on a call. And obviously, having a men's perspective is what it is. We were in a really vulnerable space due to a vulnerable time, obviously following the murder of George, in a safe space. And we created that environment through our union. And at the end of that call, we had a lot of questions, right? We came into the call with a lot of questions, and we wanted to vent and get everything out there. And then we left the call, and we were almost in the same spot, right? if you don't organize around some type of point, then what you have is a sounding board, right? And we didn't want it to end with just a conversation. We could have very well checked in with it. Again, a lot of us are friends, right? We have similar backgrounds. We could check in with each other every month and have a call, and that would have been nice. But I think at the end of the day, if we can use the platforms that we've established through our successes, right? If I was a lawyer, right, I would be calling my lawyer buddies and trying to use my platform to the best of my ability to bridge disparity gaps, to act as a beacon of light for someone else who wants to do what I want to do. And I think it starts, obviously, wrestling is the best way that Nate Jackson can do that. I'm a wrestler through and through. I love what I do. I coach. So when a kid sees me and they want to be like me, I think I can help them do that a lot more than I could help somebody else. But the reason Black Wrestling Association is going to succeed is going to be from the outside people who have been outside of the sport that we start to bring inside the sport, not just through Black Wrestling Association, but through our allies, USA Wrestling, Beat the Streets, a lot of different groups, because we want to do something that affects not just the wrestling community. Obviously, that's really important, but affects the greater communities. So anything we can do, that's kind of where we're standing right now. So our mission is to inspire, connect, and empower Black wrestlers and allies to grow wrestling through equality, representation, and opportunity. So that's kind of where we are. We have our pillars. We have our point men. We're doing a lot of really good work right now. We have some plans for Black History Month. And we're just trying to stay on the forefront of everyone's mind until we really get established and we can really make a run at this thing. And once we do, we're going to need the help or we're going to need the support of all the powerhouses within our wrestling community, so we can actually grow the sport in a really big way. I think there's a lot of great opportunities within our sport as a means of, MMA. There's a lot of crossover with things, and obviously there's cards and whatnot going on, and there's more money getting pumped into the sport. I think Flow Wrestling is doing a great job, as well as other organizations. So while it's growing, I think there's a lot of opportunity to get Black athletes involved. And the only way they're going to want to get involved is if they see it, right? Yep. Nobody turns on basketball and, is looking for, if I turn on basketball, I can see somebody who looks like me to say, hey, I'm 6'3", I probably should have played basketball, but hey, I can do that. I think we're at a place where these kids are saying, man, I can do that. And then if we can create the insulation needed to sustain that and retain that wrestling population from the grassroots all the way up to collegiate and senior level if they want, and then through opportunities after the sport to keep them involved in the sport, I think that's a great opportunity for our sport. And we would love to be part of that process.
Well, I think you're already part of it, to be honest with you. And it's clearly something that the more we tell people about the work of the group that you put together, the more people are going to want to be involved and supportive, right? So sure. A little bit of it is talking to me and others that have the ability to share it. But I think the good news spreads pretty quickly, right? And that's certainly the mission of what your group and the people that have been involved have. I do want to ask specifically, you've taken a leadership role, right? You said you had a call with 60 people at one point. And Nate Jackson's the front person. You're willing to say, I'm a leader of this group. How did you come about to that? Is that something that you felt when you started the conversation that you wanted to be a leader, or did it just feel like it was the right thing for you and where you are in your life and what the mission is, right?
Yeah. So I think being a leader is something that I just am. I am the oldest male in my family of 5. I have a big sister who is a great leader, but it's been kind of ingrained in me for a long time where I've always stood out. I've always been a little different. I've never really fit into every crowd perfectly, but I've done really well in leadership roles. I think sometimes even through the sport, I've pulled back and not been as much of a leader as I can be. Sure, through that, I have a family. I'm young. I have a family of 4. I have a wife, and I take being a leader of my household really seriously. It's like a co-lead. Kind of listen to what my wife says, but I try to be a leader the best way I can. Yeah, if she sees this, But when the calls went down, it was kind of organic. I picked up the phone and I called a lot of people individually to set up that call. I had a lot of one-on-ones, and I'm pretty blessed to be able to talk to some of the individuals that we do have within the organization, and then we have on the side of the organization on standby waiting to help. But I mean, since I've started this, I've probably talked to over 200 people, on the phone that I never would have talked to if not for taking up this endeavor. I'm used to, I had children in college. I'm used to having my hands tied. I'm doing a lot right now. I'm a coach. I still compete. I have a family, and everything's full time. There's no time for any breaks. And I take Black Wrestling Association really seriously. I take my leadership roles really seriously, but I'm learning a lot. And there's a lot of really wise individuals on our calls, in our group that I take a lot from. And I think the individuals within our group see that I am really in on it, and it makes it that much easier for them to be in. So right now we're just trying to continue this momentum, and we're trying to hit our marks and hit our dates. But I mean, if you follow us on social media, you can kind of stay close to the day-to-day, which is really simple stuff with, showing excellence in different ways to inspire that kid to try out, to inspire that kid to, do something so I can throw you up on the story, do something here and, you get here, but just to keep them interested in the process, because wrestling, I've wrestled since I was 7 years old. And so that's 19 years. It's a long time. I've wrestled for a long time, and it's a long journey. But you'll never go back and say, man, I wish I didn't work as hard. And I think that's something that's unique about our sport. The leaders that are created through it, where, obviously once you wrestled, everything else in life is easy. So if we can start to get more kids that look like me within our sport, I think that'll go a long way as to helping in some of those communities. We always talk about getting people out of this situation and getting away from this and out of this, but we have to realize that this is our country, right? Our country is composed of a lot of different areas. We shouldn't desire so much to get people away from an area as we should think about getting the right people in those areas to make those areas great areas as well. I think that we can do that. And that's some life's work right there. So for me, I've always thought I've been doing meaningful work, and I've always loved what I've been doing with coaching. But this is more of a life project for me. So it's been fun. And I stay busy, but just trying to keep the right people around and really hit those marks. It's been really important for us.
So if you're reaching out to someone who didn't know much about what the BWA is doing, is there a project or a focus or something that's going on now or coming up that they should be aware of? You're changing the world takes a lot of different paths, but I'm sure, especially with people who are wrestlers, they're very specific in preparation and timing of things. Is there things that people need to know about specifically in the projects that are going on or coming up?
Yeah, so I think a big one that I'm kind of hesitant to really put out there right now, just because of the state of the country with the pandemic. A lot of it is managing what we want to do. So the big thing that I'm thinking is right around NCAs, we're going to have a gala. We already have the place for it. We already know how we want the goods of that ceremony to run, but we want to make sure that it's safe for everyone. So I think plugging our social media just to keep people updated and in the loop is going to be really helpful, because we don't want to get too far out there and then say, hey, we want to retract. We're not going to be able to do this way or whatever. But I think in the future, like, expect some really big things. We are really trying to maintain our autonomy and not piggyback off of everyone else's projects and everyone else's presentations. We're trying to do it our own. So then we can say, you know, hey, look what we did. And then as a community, we can make that incremental progress over the years until it's not needed, right? So a real big goal of Black Wrestling Association is for eventually it to dissolve itself because it's not needed anymore within our sport. So I think that's something that we can all, as a community, kind of rally around and you know, yeah, I think there's a lot of updates to come, but I really appreciate you taking the time to get to some of that stuff. And yeah, man, it's a really cool day for us to be able to celebrate and unite again. So this is good.
So, you know, Nate, I wanted to talk a lot about your life early in life and your development as an athlete. And, you know, people probably wouldn't go the whole hour. It would at least take us to go through this. So if I can get a rain check for another interview more about, you know, Nate Jackson, the wrestler, the developed through youth into college and now working to make an Olympic team, right? But, you know, you've been very successful and prominent as one of our senior level athletes in the last couple seasons. And you made a decision this year that you would wear the BWA on your singlet. And, you know, you've done a couple of the cards. People all over the country have really been missing wrestling and paying attention to what's going on. And just curious about the idea that why you did it, what kind of response you've been getting since, you know, Nate Jackson's out there trying to win a match and make some money and also get to where he can continue to excel at the international level, and decided to use your singlet as a forum.
Yeah, so I think how we represent ourselves going forward in our sport is going to be really important. I think that we have a lot of opportunity because we are so visible through, obviously, Flow Wrestling's growing presence and media presence. So we have a lot of power in how we display ourselves and how we portray ourselves. I wanted to be on the forefront of something. I'm not an easy target. So I live a pretty low-key life. I'm not an easy target where people can paint me in a corner in any way. So I haven't gotten any negative responses from anything. It's only been positive feedback, which is awesome. But I think that I was looking for a little bit more negative so then I can have some of those conversations.
Yeah.
I think, you know, people kind of see it as a, you know, and I want to say what I want to say, but they hold it back, especially within our community. I think that, you know, we are a blue collar community where we work hard, and sometimes when, you know, we compare our successes to successes around the world and we say, well, people don't work hard, that's why this is happening. People don't do this, so this is why this is happening. I think that the more we can be a little bit more open, personally, I would rather someone say something negative about me than to hold the tongue and not say anything. I think it's an opportunity for growth. It's opportunity for two people to kind of see the opposite perspective. And I'm always open for that as well. I think my mother wanted me to go into law, which I don't know if I'll have the time to do, but you know, like, I've always been a argumentative person as a kid. And I've kind of grown out of that. And I think I'm more of a connector of ideas now, which I think just comes with a little bit more maturity. So obviously I'm open to any type of feedback. But I think that everything's been really positive within the wrestling community. I think that from the institutional level, I've been pretty supported in some of my choices. Obviously through USA Wrestling and Flow Wrestling. the different institutions. So it's been good, but I want more. We need to continue this conversation, and not just you and I, but I think the wrestling community needs to continue this conversation as it becomes easier to ignore, because we've even talked about it as a group. It's gonna, things are gonna go back to the semblance of normal. Now, as a human race, we have to decide whether or not we think normal is good enough, right? Personally, I think normal isn't great. I think normal is good for some. Normal is pretty good for me, and I can ignore it and say, I'm living okay, I'm doing fine, I can keep my nose down. But we talk about some of those principles and some of those things we stand by. I can't do that in good conscience. So I'm going to continue to be fringe and continue to try to draw responses. I think some of the individuals that we have within our organization, they're just pristine people. They're just great people. So it's really hard for them to be targets, but that's a good thing. That means that there are going to be people who disagree that see them and support them, and it's going to make them ask those questions to themselves. Man, should I maybe take a second look at this? Hey, Jordan is wearing a BWA singlet. Should I maybe start to think, maybe I listen to what they're talking about. Maybe I figure out more. Maybe I got to go on their website to take a second look. And that is how ideas connect. That is how communities connect. That's real unity, and that's how real change is brought about. So that's kind of what I'm about. And yeah, I'm kind of going to stick with that. So it's been good so far, really good. I'm looking for more, more back and forth.
Yeah. Well, part of what you mentioned earlier was to grow the sport, right? And to grow the sport, we really need to have a welcoming sport that is accessible to everyone, correct? I mean, that would be a basic thing, but getting there is not easy because it hasn't happened, right?
Right.
We haven't always been welcoming. We haven't always been diverse. We haven't always made people learn about our sport in a way that would make it grow. And just talk a little bit about your perspective of, for wrestling to be a better place, how much work are we going to have to do to get to that, right? Because I think, I wrestled high school, youth, and college. I've been working in the sport 30-something years, and we can get better, can't we?
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of different levels. So even when I started to take up this organization and getting established and getting incorporated in different things, I had to think about what we would look like in doing our work. Mm-hmm. And then I had to think about all the different levels there are to wrestling. It's not just, senior level. It's not just collegiate level. We got high school, we got middle school, we got grade school, all over the country. There are so many different clubs. And then we have referees, right? We have professionals within our sport. And, we have administrators. It poses a lot of challenges to tackle everything at once. But I think establishing policy around involvement is going to be really important. So one of our initiatives has that in mind, and they're working really hard to get that up and running, and really figuring out all the different groups that exist within that make our wrestling body. So we can say, hey, this is what it is. And now we can establish what we want it to be, right? You can't say what type of growth you want to see without knowing what's out there, right? So getting a pulse on exactly what's out there. What numbers are we looking at? How many people are involved? How many of those kids continue? What is the retention? All these things that wrestling, I don't think, has done a great job at quantifying. Different sports have done this, and that's how they are on that great stage or whatever. Wrestling is a super exciting sport. Not a person I've ever met went to a wrestling match and came away thinking, man, this sport sucks. They may not have understood the rules,
Right.
but everybody kind of gets it. You know, it's a very primal sport. So we got to do a better job as the leaders of this thing. Be better. We got to be better professionals. I think, and obviously, you know, that's coming from a guy who is the head of an organization with no background in it, right?
Yeah.
It may look like down the road where Black Wrestling Association is run by only professionals. You know, that's a goal. You know, I think that's something that's important to be able to have that power with some of the decision makings with wrestlers in that spot, but then getting the professionals to work on creating the change, because you know, we can't do it all. We can't be all encompassing to everybody. And I think that's something that wrestling has done for a long time with every group. I mean, all of our leaders are former wrestlers, which is not an indictment on anybody at all. But I think there are people who are really smart at growing things. And to be able to pass that baton to somebody is going to be really important for our sport going forward if we want it to reach the heights and the potential that I personally think that it can.
So Nate, I really want to thank you for spending your Martin Luther King Day with me and with USA Wrestling.